Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to go over the new Daybreak spoilers. Okay guys, so today we got 4 new cards for Targon, and they all have the keyword Daybreak. And tomorrow we'll be getting the champion that is going to sort of align with the Daybreak theme. So the first card we have is Solari Soldier. A 1 mana 2/2 with Daybreak. Give me +1/+1 this round. Oh sorry, I realized I haven't explained Daybreak yet. Is bonus if this is the first card you play in a round. So this is the opposite of Nightfall. This is a bonus if it's the first card you've played this turn, not the second card or third or whatever. So the difference between this and Nightfall is really Nightfall you only have to cast one spell and the rest of your Nightfall triggers are going to be triggered, right? So if you cast one spell, like a 0-cost spell like Fading Memories, you can cast any number of Nightfalls and they all trigger. But in this, you can only cast one Daybreak, and then the rest can no longer trigger, unless you have Raven, which we'll talk about in a second. But Solari Soldier for a 1-drop means it's almost always going to get triggered. It's a 1 mana 3/3 the first round, and then after that it's a 1 mana 2/2. The thing to note about this is that it's like a strictly better Cithria, which we've seen in Jagged Butcher. And the thing about Jagged Butcher is that it is not a guaranteed 3/3. Solari Soldier is, but only the first turn you've played it. So comparing Jagged Butcher to this card, which is the most obvious comparison, Jagged Butcher has the potential to be a 3/3 for multiple rounds, making it much harder for other mid-range Bannerman decks to sort of get in the damage they need to, because Jagged Butcher can survive multiple rounds. Solari Soldier is not going to be a good counter against mid-range because he's only 3/3 the first turn, but he is going to be much better for Bannerman decks because he's a guaranteed 3/3 that first turn, and he's impossible to block because of the buff. You don't want to feed the buff the value the first turn, so even if, and most people won't even chump block on the first turn because they know their creature can get more value late in the game. But the point is, this is a 1 mana 3/3 guaranteed, which is pretty strong, and then it just becomes a Cithria. So this is going to be a very strong card. I could definitely see with the other cards in the spoiler a very nice mid-range Targon deck, maybe combining with Demacia most likely. And if not Demacia, then probably Featherlord actually. I don't think Bilgewater has enough tools right now to compare to Bilgewater, but Featherlord I mean, but we'll see. This could be a very strong mid-range base, and Solari Soldier just is proven to be a very good card. So we have Solari Shieldbearer, a 2 mana 3/2 that says Daybreak, give me +4 health this round. This 4 health is a pretty big deal. It means that I can take a blocker and attack without losing any health, and your opponent doesn't want to feed that value, right? As I said before, there's no reason to block it when it's just going to keep its when it's going to lose the health at the end of the round. So you're getting a guaranteed 3 damage, and it's very hard to attack into this when you're on a blocking turn. You play this. The only downside to this compared to other cards we've seen of this sort of type is it gives its buff to itself compared to like a card like War Chefs that can give the buff to its ally. This card is much weaker in that sense, where it has some value, being it can be played late in the game and be a good blocker, and even it can stand alone as a 1 unit. But compared to War Chefs, it just doesn't have the same stats. It doesn't, it's pretty good, don't get me wrong. Like, the health is very decent. But compared to a card like War Chefs, it just doesn't help your mid-range plan as much. But it could definitely replace War Chefs in certain decks. I'm not saying it can't. But compared to War Chefs, I can't really see which one you'd be playing, right? I would play War Chefs over this card, but some people might not want to. And if the meta is very, heavy removal dependent, like if you're worried about Thermo Beam, this card is actually a great counter to Thermo Beam. And so I definitely think this card could work equally as well as a lot of the 2-drops we've seen from mid-range. The next card we have is Raven, Daylight's Spear, a 5 mana 5/5, so like a Garen stats, except without the regen. And Daybreak, create a random Daybreak card in hand. It's always day for us, which means if you play multiple Daybreak cards in a turn, they all activate. Very interesting. Uh, you're probably playing this on turn 5, right? So this is gonna be the only card you play. You're gonna get a free card, which what we've seen so far with Solari Soldier and Solari Shieldbearer is going to be a pretty decent card. At the very worst, you're getting the Solari Soldier, which is just a 1 mana 3/3 that turn. Like, that is pretty good. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. And the fact that it's always day could help get you multiple Daybreak triggers. Now, that might seem underwhelming, but if you're playing a Solari Soldier on top of a Solari Shieldbearer on turn 6 or something like that, this could help you get the most value. And if we get a new champion tomorrow, the champion tomorrow, if the champion tomorrow has something to do with Daybreak or its level up um, requirement is you've triggered Daybreak enough times, this card could potentially be very strong at getting multiple Daybreak triggers in a turn, meaning you can get your champion level up faster. So this is going to be a pretty good card in that strategy. And even with Solari Soldier and Solari Shieldbearer, it might just be a decent card for mid-range. The only problem is we've seen a lot of better 5 mana 5/5s. Like the 5 mana 5/5 tough, Radiant Guardian. Garen has even better stats than this. And Heck is much better than this, right? The regen, the ability to level up and just close out the game is super strong. And Garen isn't even played anymore. So um, the ability for this to draw a card in a Daybreak deck is very strong. But otherwise, I don't think it's going to beat out the other 5 drops we've seen for, mid range, right? Although if you're playing a Targon Freljord or a non-Demacia strategy, we could actually see this. Although we did just get Trundle, a very nice 5 drop for mid range. So this card has a lot of cards to compete for in its spot. And if you're not playing a Daybreak deck, it just sort of has the effect of draw from a very small pool of cards, which actually we've seen a couple very good cards for this strategy mid range, but like otherwise it just is kind of underwhelming. I don't know. Um, if you're gonna compare this to, you could compare this to Swiftling Lancer being a 5 mana 5/4. Swiftling Lancer being a 5 mana 5/4 with Challenger, and you still get to draw the card. This card is a 5 mana 5/5 that doesn't have the Challenger but still draws you the card. Um, the difference between these two cards is slight. The only difference is that this card enables you to level up a champion much faster or use a champion's ability if that has something to do with Daybreak, which we know it will. When Swiftling Lancer has Challenger, these are the closest comparison, right? But I think that this card's better than Swiftling Lancer's draw because the pool we've seen for these cards so far, and this might change, has been much better for the strategy than Swiftling Lancer's is. There's a lot of bad cards you can get with Swiftling Lancer, but the challenger on Swiftling Lancer is pretty strong. So you're going to need a very specific deck for this card to make more sense to the other 5 drops. It's not that it's bad, it's just that it has to compete with a lot of other really good cards. And the last card we have is Sun Guardian, a 6 mana 5/3 Overwhelm, Daybreak, give me +4/+4 this round. So this is a 6 mana 8/7 that is no longer an 8/7 after the round. This card is pretty bad. The thing about this card that really seems bad is the fact that although it has a hard time. Here's the thing with this card, an 8/7 that got +4/+4 this round means your opponent is forced to block it for little value because the buff is temporary, so they're feeding the buff value, right? And I've talked about that a lot. You feeding a buff value is really hard unless you're playing a ton of chump blockers, and this gets around the chump blockers because of the overwhelm. The only problem is if you're even hitting for, say the opponent has a 5-drop with 5 health, just 5 health like a Raven. You're getting in 3 damage, but then the Sun Guardian after that becomes a completely bad card and just a chump blocker. For 6 mana, it's high impact for that turn, but low value afterwards, and that just seems very bad for a mid-range deck that wants to be closing out the game, right? And although this can punch in a little bit of extra damage, it's not, as a mid-range deck, at least a Daybreak deck seems to be a very good mid-range deck. This card seems to be trying to be over the top kill your opponent, right? Like, I just don't see this working for a mid-range deck. Like, why would you want to get in some extra damage and then have a weaker unit? Like a Cythria is much better than this at closing out the game. And although this has some Daybreak strategies, if you're playing against Cythria or Genevieve, that is just so much better at making your other units get more value and being able to close out the game with that Fearsome or that Scout. The overwhelm on this and the ability to get +4/+4 that round is just, it just only matters for that round, and you're not even going to get enough damage in to close out the game. Mid range can stall for long enough to get that Cythria out and close out the game with a wide board with Fearsome, avoiding chump blockers. This card tries to avoid chump blockers with the Overwhelm, but the problem with it is that it doesn't deal enough damage to close out the game on its own. Cythria can attack multiple times and get that buff and that Fearsome multiple times, which means even if you don't close out the game on the first try, you get another attack, which means you can punch in that damage over time, right? And obviously, the turn you play Cythria, you're trying to close out the game. But even if you don't, you're fine. And Cythria helps you get past chump blockers. So here's the thing. Cythria gives all your units Fearsome. So if you have three other units, right? Let's say 3 other units. Your opponent can block one of them, but then the other 2 are going to get through. With Sun Guardian, they can block the Sun Guardian, and that's it. You're not getting any damage through. And then after that turn, maybe Sun Guardian killed the opponent's unit. It's just become a removal spell at that point, right? It's just now a 4/3 with Overwhelm. That's useless late in the game. When a Cythria and a Genevieve can get so much more value and close out the game much better and with, okay. And when a Cythria and a Genevieve can just close out the game and help you get in that extra damage where this card can't, those just seem much better. So I have a hard time seeing this card being viable at all. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed. That's it for today's spoilers. Kind of short. Hopefully we'll... Alright, guys, that's it for this video. Kind of short, but we didn't get that many cards. I am super excited for tomorrow's new champion. Seeing how it combines with this, I actually really like mid-range as a strategy. I'm excited to see what new strategy we could have for a good mid-range deck with these new Daybreak cards. Anyway, guys, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.